Welcome into another episode of Halos in the Infield with your host Toddfox and
Fernando Mendez, who's not Toddfox.
exactly. And we're here to talk about 2002 World Series champions, your Anaheim Angels of Los Angeles of Western Hemisphere, not named under China's communist regime. But anyway, we're talking about the Angels now. It's a 20th year anniversary, believe it or not, of this team winning the World Series. We would hope that there was peppered in one or two other titles, but I digress. We're here to talk about the season that was. If you missed the previous episode, we broke down the roster, the moves, and everything that led from 2001 to 2002. So now in this week of reliving the history, we're going to talk about and break down the months that were 2002.
Yeah, so if any of us have any memories while we're going through, go ahead and throw them in there. Like I said, 2002, I was only 7 years old. So I don't have a lot of the memories of like, oh, well, this is what happened in May. So that's probably going to be where Todd shines. But I did take it upon myself to go through the months. I sent the records and everything of what that month played out to. And we'll just kind of tackle this month by month, and we'll go from there. We already talked a little bit about the rosters, the players who made up the 2002 Angels. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and hop back in time, check that episode, and then come here.
There you go. So how do you want to start this one off, Fernando? You want us to break down here the month of April on how it got started here?
Yeah, absolutely. So in April, the Angels had, I believe, their only month where they were under 500. They were 11 and 14 in the month of April. So what do you remember about the beginning of the 2002 season yourself?
Back then, I just remember not being too thrilled about the pitching, so to speak. I wasn't expecting this type of seasons that they actually had, but I was really hyped for the hitting. And out the gates, the very first game, Bartolo Colon versus Jared Washburn, it was a complete game by the Cleveland Indians win at Cleveland, or at home in Anaheim Stadium. They lost 6-0. Bartolo, big sexy, shut him down. Very disappointed in that first month of April because they left a lot of base runners on, and they were just routinely getting beat at one stretch of that month.
Yeah, they lost. They were shut out opening day, right? 6-0.
Yep. And then they came back the next night on the and won 7-5 before losing 6-5 the following night. So they were 1-2 out the gates at home, and then they had to travel to Texas, Seattle, Oakland, teams that usually kick their butt, and then they had Texas, Oakland, Seattle. So it's basically outside of playing the Indians, it was just all within division that first month, and the division took it to them for the most part.
Yeah, and they also had a 6-game losing streak very early on. Within like the first 10 games, they were losing like crazy. So I would only imagine people were like, "Oh, here we go again," because prior to that, the Angels were not good for quite a while.
Yeah, they got off to one of their roughest patches in team history. They were 6-14. And I think a lot of fans up until just a couple of years ago always write off a bad April, and they're always like, "Well, 2002 we were 6-14." You can't emulate what that team did. As we broke down the roster, the teams that got off into bad Aprils that me and Fernando have been talking about, where the Angels need to get off to a good April to get into a good mojo and stop playing from behind. They didn't have a roster like this one. And this one was magical for several reasons, and that's why they were able to get past that gaping hole in April and tough times later in the regular season. But the recent teams where, again, fans are like, "Oh, they were 6-14, they could bounce back." It's always a detriment to any Angel team that hasn't made the postseason. You could just look back to their April and say, you know what, they really got off to a bad start. And towards the end of Scioscia's tenure, like, that's what would happen. The Angels would not make the playoffs when they get off to slow starts.
Yeah, Roger Laws does it all the time. Whoa, don't worry, guys. Hey, don't worry, guys. The Angels were 6-12 in 2002, and they won the World Series. But that was before Artie Moreno. Yeah, well, I bought the Angels, and don't worry, guys. We're going to win another championship. Because I got my scotch. Yeah,
Oh man.
that's a new addition, Todd. I'm going to call myself Farturo Mendezzo.
Dude. All you need now is that glass with the noise of the rocks, the ice going
the
back
ice.
and forth. Yeah, because that's him, dude. That's him.
We'll see if we have it in the budget. Sorry. We'll see if we have it in the budget. Toddfox.
Oh man, well, they started.
Real quick. You think Artie Moreno's like the kind of guy who like hits on everybody no matter what? Like he thought, like, hey, you foxy lady, how about you give me another old fashioned?
He probably does. I think there's a Frank McCourt type of dynamic with him, like where he can probably get away with what he wants to because he's so rich, and the wife is like, you know what, I'll be on his arm during the game, but after the game, I've got my 20-year-old boy toy, to play with. So I think it's one of those.
Let's hope Artie. Well, actually, you know what? Maybe we need Artie to get canceled.
Yeah, that maybe. I mean, we need to find out if he's racist at all, or I don't know. We'll have to see.
Maybe. I mean, we pay his employees during pandemics.
It's too bad that's not enough to get him fired. But anyway.
Yeah, right. We digress. Nobody's here arguing that he's an amazing person.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else to add about April? I mean, I know that was a pretty uneventful month for the Angels.
The only thing that I'll say is that when they went to 6-14, they were shut out by Seattle at Seattle. They turned it around by beating them by a touchdown the next night. They went on to sweep Toronto at home, and then they went to Cleveland and got retribution. They swept them, and before taking another, and they won 9 out of 10 basically. So after being 6-14, they quickly turned it around, and they were getting back to 500 really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I had said in the past that I thought that they didn't get too hot till July, but I mean, they were hot after April. They never really cooled down.
Yeah, including they scored on the last day of April against Cleveland. They beat them 21-2. So yeah, and then they scored, and then they beat them 7-2 the next night and 8-0 the next night. So they were averaging during that winning streak about at least 6 runs a game. So they were doing really good.
Loss had 5 RBIs that day on Tuesday, April 30th.
Man. Yeah.
Let's see. Devannon had 4 RBIs. Pizzo had 3 RBIs. I mean, those guys alone were almost the entire offense.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Devannon, dude. That's another guy, a hero that played with them with the Angels for a while. One of those guys that you can't forget. Like he was one of those guys where you rooted for him to make the starting lineup when he did.
Ortiz pitched a good game that day too, and then your boy Matt Wise came in for an inning at the very end.
There you go. He's like, I'm going to be coaching one day, and he did a good job.
I'm going to coach. Maybe not about baseball, but
yeah. And then there was a game too against Cleveland. The next night they won 8-0. Kevin Napier pitched a shutout. The bullpen did good, and they beat the former Angel Chuck Finley. So, and another former Angel pitching coach, Charles Nagy, he was in there. He pitched an inning, gave up 3 runs. So, they were facing some, pretty tough. I mean, look, Cleveland's lineup wasn't what it was at the time, but you still had Jin Tomey, you still had Fryman. Wait a minute, no, that lineup sucks. I was trying to give him some credit. I mean, old Omar Vizquel. They were missing Albert Bells and players like that. But but getting into May, what were your thoughts on May?
So in May they were 19-7. So through May going into June, they finished that month with 30 wins and 21 losses.
That is really good. 9 games. I mean, think about it, Fernando. How many times have we been like, hey, we just wish that they would be 500 at the end of April, and then they're sitting just 2 months into the season, 9 games over. I mean, that's a good feeling, right? As a fan?
When was the last time that we could realistically say the Angels were that good?
2014. That's it.
No, not even 2014. They didn't really pick up till about July, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they had a slow April and May. That's right. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
June they were kind of average, and yeah, you're right. I
July
don't.
really started, and then that's when, like, what was it, August when Garrett Richards got hurt?
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
It's August or September where he got hurt.
It was in Boston. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, running to first base.
Hmm.
But that year they had Matt Shoemaker, who at that time was a Rookie of the Year candidate.
Yeah, he was breaking out. He was pitching really good.
We never
That's
did a
a,
2014 roster deep dive, so
we should.
that's an episode for sure. We'll see how long the lockout lasts.
Yeah, we might have plenty of deep dives to do if that's the case.
Yeah, right. Oh, there you go. We broke the wall on telling people that we were recording this during the lockout.
Oops.
Our bad. Or we'll put out a post. That's what every podcast says when they definitely don't do that.
Yeah, we
Put out a post.
yeah, I'll get to that. No, I won't.
Yeah, like almost every podcast has to do. They're like, "Oh, we'll edit that out." And like, not one time have I ever, obviously, well, at least that I know of, ever edited it out. So
Exactly.
we're raw and uncut here at Heaney.
Oh, I want to bring up one other game in the month of May. You know, as you mentioned, they were 19-7. They beat the Chicago White Sox at the Big A 19-0. They had an 8-run third inning, and they only allowed 3 hits. Scott Schoenweiss, that was only his second win amongst 4 losses, but he pitched 7 innings strong, no runs, and the Angels only gave up 3 hits and had 24 hits. Brad
Fulmer had a great game.
Yeah, he did. And again, that's one. If you listen to the other episode that we had, we were talking a lot about how the Angels had, gotten finally a DH after years of literally striking out on DHs. Brad Fulmer seemed to really fit that club that year.
Yeah, GA had a good game. Lot of good. Adam Kennedy had a good game. I mean, Tim Salmon got in with the act with 2 RBIs.
And I don't remember this guy, Julio Ramirez, but he had a nice game for the Angels too. I don't remember him.
No, I do not. But 3 RBIs.
Yeah, right. Not bad.
Okay, so let me see if there was any other impressive wins. I mean, 12-2 against Kansas City. That's good, but nothing compared to the other games we've seen.
Yeah. But all in all, I mean, you finish the month at 30-21. I mean, that's not bad at all.
No, nothing to complain about there. And then June, 17-12. So yet another winning month. Mm-hmm. So after that, they entered July 47-33.
Yes.
So,
and in that month, it was the interleague games, because back then it was like, now they play mixture games all year, and it's not really, hey, we're having an interleague weekend. Back then it was, everyone would play, teams outside of their leagues. And this year the Angels had the Dodgers and then the NL Central. So in that month they had the Cincinnati Reds, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the St. Louis Cardinals, Milwaukee Brewers, and the Dodgers all rolled into this huge long 2-week stretch. And they actually lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers.
Ooh.
So that was pretty messed up. They lost that on the on the road, and then they lost 2 of 3 to the Cardinals. So they lost. That was a rough series right there. But they swept the Brewers, and they took 2 of 3 from the Pirates and 2 of 3 from the Reds.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm looking into some of those games. Yeah. An interesting stretch of games. It triggers you to see that they lost to the Dodgers, lost to the Cardinals, but they swept the Brewers.
Yeah. And I'm looking at one game right here where they lost to the Cardinals at Busch Stadium. Was that the year Darryl Kyle died? Because he's slated right here as the winning pitcher against the Angels. It might have been the year that he passed. I want to see here. Yeah, he did die that year in his sleep in a hotel. Yeah. So, but that was one of his final games. Yeah. What happened?
It said he died in Chicago?
Yeah. I think they were on the road. They were going to play the Cubs. But this was, I think, a month or two before he passed away. But he pitched a gem against the Angels. They beat him, I think, 6-2 that day.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah, he
But
pitched.
there was another series at the end of June that they beat the Dodgers 2 of 3.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing that, Angel fans will know, Dodger fans try to forget. The Angels usually, at worst, split the season series with the Dodgers. They usually always win it. That's why they have I think a 15 games over 500 record against the Dodgers. So they usually and it doesn't matter the records. Usually the Angels always just do good here in Anaheim, maybe take 1 of 3 there, or if they're having a real good year, they'll take 2 of 3 at Chavez. It's rare when they sweep either side. So yeah, I mean, you can go back here to 2002.
The Angels are winning 73-63 in the Freeway Series.
Oh, it's 10 games.
It's spring training.
Okay.
Well, it's 10 games now because remember in 2020, I think we got our cheeks clapped by the Dodgers.
That's right. Yeah, they swept us. Yeah.
Was twice, or how many games was it in 2020? It was like 6, wasn't it?
It was 6. Yeah, they took it to us. I'll admit that. That was the only time I've ever seen them sweep us.
Well, 2020 didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. That was
pen, the memory pen thing.
That was practice, right?
Yeah, practice.
Talking about practice?
Don't talk to me about practice.
So, again, they finished May strong. Oh, no, we're into June. Sorry.
Yeah, we're 47-33 through June. So going into July, they were 16-10. So after July, that put them at 63-43. And I think July is when they really started to be considered contenders and not pretenders.
I agree.
It happens all the time where a team gets hot. They are hot through the first half. All-Star game rolls around. Oh, sorry, we were just playing. We suck.
Yeah. And that's the thing that scares Angels fans so much because you had the All-Star game, and I think it was right after, and you had the threats of a shutdown mid-season. And I went to the game right before the 12th hour or the 11th hour when baseball and the collective bargaining agreement, they reestablished it. They were able not to avoid the lockout. And I remember going to that game, and they had to, over the PA system, have to announce several times, stop throwing things onto the field because the fans were booing. Because, again, the Angels were really hot at the time, and there was a vibe going around that this team might actually make the postseason. And they didn't want to see what happened in 94 with the Expos and a lot of other teams that were on record paces. Matt Williams with the Giants. It all go to crap. So, and this is, I even remember my dad saying, boy, if they cancel this season, I've been through a lot, but if they cancel this season, I'm done because they actually look like they want to win this year. He was so mad, and I was too. I was
angry Papa Fox.
Yeah, he was super angry. So, yeah, it was just the next night we found out that the baseball season would resume. So that was really happy days after that.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, it led to what up to this point is the only championship in our team's history. Hopefully we're listening to this in 5 years laughing, but who knows?
Exactly. But yeah, you mentioned it was another. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, from what it looks like, July didn't have too many eventful games in the sense of blowouts. They didn't play any, of the abnormal teams. Everything's pretty straightforward here. You had your Orioles, your Rays, your Royals, your Twins, your Athletics, your Mariners, A's again, and then Mariners to close out the month.
Yeah.
Red Sox to close out the month.
And this should throw some fans back in the what is it called, the Wayback Machine a little bit. You had Aaron Seeley. Aaron Seeley pitched against the Dodgers and got a 7-5 victory. 9 innings, allowed just 3 hits on 5 strikeouts. Aaron Seeley, and he was opposed by Ishii, and he was 11-4 at the time. He got lit up by the Angels, 5 runs. Mota pitched Terry Mulholland, who had been around for a long time. Their lineup was Rebello, Isturis, Mark Grizzolonic, Adrian Beltre, I think Jordan, I forgot his first name, Brian Jordan, Eric Karros, Ross, Sean Green, Paul LaDuca, Dave Roberts, the manager currently of the Dodgers. So that team had faced the Angels, and Salmon went off in that game, 3 RBIs. Gloss had an RBI, Spezio with 2. Yeah, so that was a nice victory against the Doyers at Angel Stadium, 7-0.
That was for June, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then yeah, so like you said, but them going 16-10 in July. I'm sorry, I got into June, but 16-10 in July, I thought was really good because again they played the Central. They took took on the Yankees, the Red Sox, went toe to toe with them, and in some pretty close games, and took out Cleveland, Detroit, got some wins in Toronto again. They were just on a roll, and to get 20 games over 500, good God! Like we're happy when they're 1 or 2 games over 500.
Which happened a lot in 2021.
Exactly.
But that's all that happened. Games over 500, and then 1 or 2 games under 500.
Exactly. So I
The
mean,
wheels fell off, and then it was like 10 games under 500.
yeah. And this is late July, a stretch here into August where the Oakland A's just go on a ridiculous 23 game win streak or something like that. It's in Moneyball. It's well documented, but people forget the Angels went, I think, 18-5 in that stretch. So
Yeah, because the Athletics were also dealing at this point, right? They went on to win the division. Obviously, it didn't mean anything because they didn't win anything.
exactly.
But the Athletics were just as hot. So, the Angels, nobody was paying attention to them at the time, right? They were, I think that's kind of why they were able to play the underdogs the entire time.
Yeah, yeah.
You had people were considering Oakland the underdogs because they weren't spending money. They had this new ideology called Moneyball, which, people still use analytics today. Back then, it was still a new ideology. So everyone's paying attention to what Oakland's doing. Meanwhile, the Angels are almost just as hot, and people are like, who?
Yeah, yeah.
Ben Steele, who?
Nationally, that team wasn't known. I think people kind of known or knew of Tim Salmon as being Mr. Angel. They didn't know that your Troy Glosses, your Darren Erstads. They wouldn't know Garrett Anderson until he had that breakout 05 season. So you basically had a bunch of misfits on this team, bunch of homegrown guys, bunch of guys who were traded over, and just they all meshed. And they just had a spectacular mid-July through August run. And yeah, like you said, they weren't going to catch Oakland, but who cares? It was all about then getting in the tournament. You don't have the tweaked playoff chances now where they try to hamper your wild cards. Back then, the wild card, it was just like winning a division, really. There was really no incentive to, because you got, okay, so you play the number one team. If you take them out, you're in the driver's seat. You know what I mean? Like you had the same amount of games to go at it. So it was actually worse for the team that finished early, because sometimes these teams like Oakland would win so many damn games, rest their guys through half of September. By the time the postseason starts, you're not in a 7-game series. You're in a best of 5. So if you go down 1 early, or God forbid 2 early, your back's really against the wall. So there was a lot of pressure on number 1 ranked teams, and Oakland fell prey to that. And the Angels were just able to be like, okay, no one thought we were supposed to be here, but we did, and let's show the world. And I think that's what their mentality was, finishing out the rest of that season, where everyone was like, oh, the Angels are, they're going to choke. And I even was waiting for them to hit the fan, but they kept winning. They just kept winning.
I mean, that's one of the things, if you listen back to those interviews with, David Eckstein, they all talk about how they viewed themselves as underdogs. And they were. I mean, they were known for being the Disney team. They were known. That's what they were known for, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, they didn't have any big name stars. They didn't have a Mike Trout. You can argue that was Tim Salmon, but let's be honest. If you went up to 100 baseball fans in 2002, or I won't say baseball fans, 100 just average baseball fans. The typical guys, the typical bros you pick out. Drinking the $15 Budweisers out in the Chorus Light Deck. You ask them, outside of Anaheim, let's say we're in Milwaukee, to name 100 players, Tim Salmon might not have been on too many of those lists. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a huge name. So, that's what the Angels were known for. They weren't that big name team. They weren't a big market yet. They were still a small market back then.
I agree. And they were always looked at as the redheaded stepchild, and it's just funny they switched to red that particular year. My question to you, though, Fernando, is the way that things are now with launch angles and everyone wanting to hit home runs and 3-run homers. If you look back on this squad, if you watch the DVDs or if you remember them playing or you've seen interviews of opposing players or pitchers that talk about that 2002 team, the one thing they did was pepper the damn field with singles and doubles or stretching things out. Is that something to where, as popular as the game has gotten over the years, Fernando, do you think a team can start that trend again, or do you think we'll see that again to where a team is just going to be going for hits and just doing, station to station, taking that extra base? Do you think that could be back in winning baseball again in major leagues?
You can make this argument about any of the major sports. I mean, all sports are a copycat league, right? I mean, look at the NBA. Right now, 3-point shots are hot. Everybody shoots threes now.
Yep.
You have centers who are 7 feet tall shooting threes. 10 years ago, that really wasn't a thing. You drove to the basket. You used your big man to drive to the basket. Mm-hmm. And now, like I said, the 3-point shot's hot. In the NFL, like 5 years ago, like there was a giant revolution of mobile quarterbacks, right? Yeah. Right around the Tim Tebow era, there was a lot of like college guys coming up who they were getting shots, they were getting opportunities. So, it's a copycat league. Baseball is no different. Right now, launch angle is cool. Home runs are cool. Maybe some people would argue that home runs are saving baseball. I think it's more like the league letting kids play. That's saving baseball, not the home run, but we could talk about that some other time. But I think it's going to take some time, but I do think that we will go back to a small ball mentality. And going back to what you were saying about 2002, how they would just spray the ball everywhere. That was a Mike Scioscia team. That was like the glory days of Mike Scioscia. That was what Joe Madden was trying to do with the 1985 baseball, right?
Yeah.
Those were the days where small ball won games. Don't get me wrong, small ball still wins games, but today's baseball is much different than the baseball you and I grew up with. I've said that 100 times. Yeah. And it's truer today than it ever has been. But I think there will be a time where a team shifts enough for maybe 2 or 3 other teams to follow along and be like, hey, you know what? We can't afford any mashers, but we can afford guys who make contact. And then that slowly starts to transition again. We don't have a lot of speed anymore in the game like we used to. So that's part of it.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said, because I think that's what's missing. Like, you don't have the Kenny Loftons, your Otis Nixons, your Ricky Hendersons, guys like that anchor the top of a lineup, and that damn, if we're gonna win today, we got to keep those guys off the bases. And the Angels had Eckstein and they had Kennedy. I remember Brad Fulmer would steal bases, Tim Salmon would take one here or there, Garrett Anderson would run. That team, with the exception of maybe Gloss and a couple others, that didn't really run, they were runners, man, and they were just fun to freaking watch. And I hope that part comes back to baseball, because I think it's always exciting when guys steal bases, hit and runs. A lot of that stuff is missing from the game. And like, I'm hoping that you're right with this coming back, because speed is definitely something fun to watch. I'm getting tired of the launch angle. I think when we talked about the last episode, we were blown away by the batting averages, the on-base percentages that the Angels had. And that's because they sacrificed, hit the other way, and didn't always have to be like, okay, I need a 3-run homer right here. It's like, no, let me get on. The guy behind me will take care of business. And if you have that type of faith in your teammates, and your teammates have that faith in you and themselves, only good things can happen. And I think that's why the Angels were the way they were.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, home runs are cool and all, but personally, I think it's much more exciting to see a guy on first base score from home on a hit and run and a ball in the alley That's
Yeah.
way more exciting to me than a home run. I mean, a home run's cool, and I love the sound of the ball off the bat.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, I perfectly executed hit and run with the tag with the guy who barely beats out the tag at home off a good throw. That's so much more exciting to me because then you're on the edge of your seat, and then when your guy scores, you're like, hell yeah, woo! You know, when it's a home run, you know, you clap, you cheer. You know, you hear the song, oh, you know, the fireworks. You know, that's cool and all. But I love the excitement of those small ball kind of plays. I love guys stealing bases. I love guys being aggressive. I like people advancing off of past balls. Like that's the kind of stuff that
Yeah.
I think most hardcore baseball fans miss. And I hope that there is somewhat of a transition back towards those kind of days. I think it will happen. It'll just take some time.
I hope so, like you said, because I remember going to a game. They were playing Boston, and it was the Angels were up 2-1, or they were down 2-1 in the eighth. And the pitcher, like you were saying, like he goes to throw the first base, but he threw it into the outfield, into right field, and both runners came around to the lead runner scored, and to tie it up in the ninth inning, and the place was going nuts. The Red Sox had to load the bases to set up a double play, and then it was just a weak flare that barely got over the second baseman's head that ended the game, and the place went nuts. I think it went more nuts than like a home run, a walk-off, because it barely went over. I mean, everyone thought that the second baseman was going to get it on the jump and that the bases were going to remain loaded, but it barely got over his glove, and everyone was like, yeah, you know, and that's the kind of excitement that a single or a double, or like you said, a well-placed hit can really do wonders for the game and bring the excitement in, because now it's like we're depending always on the home run. Whereas if we're getting the doubles down the line, the crazy suicide squeezes and stuff like that, it's exciting.
Absolutely. One thing I'll say is 2017, Angels were playing the Dodgers. I was in my season seats in 238 in right field there.
Okay.
And Cameron Maben struck out with bases loaded in the ninth inning. So he struck out, and I remember him kind of like bending over, like kind of like in defeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yasmani Grandal dropped the ball, kind of played patty cake with himself, threw the ball into right field over the first baseman's head. And the Eagles scored on a walk-off strikeout. And yeah, same kind of thing, dude. The place was going ballistic.
Yeah, because no one expected that. That's the cool thing about baseball.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's the one thing I love about baseball. Every other sport can dream all they want, but baseball to me will always be the best sport in the world because there's no clock.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? In football, you can basically mail it in the last 2 minutes if you're up. You know what I mean? Kneel it, run it. With baseball, you can't do that. And that's in that specific play, it was just proof. You know, you were basically on a borrowed strike because the guy dropped strike two. So, maybe didn't even make it a first. If it would have been a perfectly executed throw, I don't even think maybe would have been out of the batter's box.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, I remember when the Angels were bad and Cal Ripken was breaking our hearts, setting the records against the Angels. And there was a series over there in Camden where the Angels actually were taking it to them. They were up like 15-2 in the ninth inning. The Orioles had got the first out, and you're thinking, okay, 2 more outs, game's over. I actually started to go outside and play. I come back in, it's 15-12. The Orioles had the bases loaded, and if it wasn't for a nice play at shortstop to end the game, the Orioles might have tied it or won it. So, I mean, that can happen too, and I'm sure everyone has their story about walking out of a room thinking the game's over, and then you come back and you're like, wait, they won or they lost? Yeah. That's a cool thing about baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. So to tie it back, 63 and 43 through July, there were 20 games over. Mm-hmm. So in August, they were 18-11, which brings them to 81 and 54 through the month of August.
Wow, that's impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time that we can realistically say that the Angels were that hot in August?
Yes.
I mean, in August, so they played the Yankees, won that series. They split that series. My apologies. Mm-hmm. Had a single game against the Tigers, obviously a makeup. Lost the series to the White Sox. Won the series against the Blue Jays, swept the Tigers, won the series against the Indians, lost the series to the Yankees again, split with the Red Sox, won against the Devil Rays, but that's when the Devil Rays were really bad.
Oh yeah, they were terrible.
And then to end, they swept the Orioles to end them. Not too many, excuse me, eventful wins there. They had one win where it was 11-2, and that was against the White Sox. That was probably the biggest blowout. I don't think they got killed in any game either that month.
No, they pretty much did their thing. They were on a roll. They were playing very consistent at this time.
Yeah, 9-10. Losing to the Red Sox might be probably like the most eventful game. Let's see. So the Red Sox already had Johnny Damon. They had Nomar Garciaparra back then.
Wow.
And they had Manny Ramirez, who got 4 RBIs that day. And then the Angels had Palmeiro, Erstad, Fulmer, Gloss, who had 2 RBIs, Spezio, and Kennedy. The rest of them, those guys just got 1 RBI when Gloss got 2. So, they scored a lot of runs, but their pitching did not get it done that day. Ortiz had a bad game. He gave up 4 runs. Levine gave up 2 runs, and then Percival, uncharacteristically that season, gave up 2 runs as well.
I will say, though, about Ortiz, he was one of those guys that he could either be really good or really bad, and I think he got a lot of those wins that season because the offense would show up for him. The hitting would be really good for him. I think he benefited a lot on the hitting because his ERA wasn't spectacular, and his career wouldn't be much after the 2002 season. But he was slated as their ace at one point because he was still knocking out the dubs. But yeah, I remember watching Ortiz. He was like one of those pitchers where you're like, okay, what is it going to be, the good Ortiz today, or is it going to be the bad Ortiz? So
Andrew Heaney situation.
Yeah, it was. Except I will say one thing about Ortiz though. He didn't walk too many guys, but he did give up the long ball a lot.
How was Andrew Heaney's walks? Now that I bring that up, I don't know.
Oh, he walked a lot of guys because he would throw a lot of. Remember, Heaney would have like 90 pitches in like the 4th inning, or 3rd inning. It was terrible.
I know he gave up long balls like it was going out of style, like he got paid for long balls sometimes. But his walks, I don't remember. Let's see.
I wonder what he's going to do with the Dodgers this year. Just to throw that out there, I wonder if he's going to be anywhere good.
So he had 41 walks last year. He had 19 walks in 2020, 30 walks in 2019. 2018, he had 45. So
yeah.
But a lot of walks.
He did throw a lot of pitches, though. Good God.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then September. In September, they were 18-9.
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane. And they ended up the season with the 99-63 final record, but they didn't win the division.
Yep.
That, of course, was the Oakland A's, who the A's obviously went on to win the World Series, right? No.
Yeah, they didn't get out of the first round. You look at their lineup at this time, too. If you remember any of these guys, you had Bobby Durham, who was a very good DH/leadoff dude. You had Ellis. What was his first name here? Mark Ellis, who was very serviceable as a second baseman there. You had Miguel Tejada in his prime, Eric Chavez in his prime. Jermaine Dye he was still good, but not at his prime. David Justice, not in his prime, but still good. You had Eric Burns, who was good, always an Angel killer. Former Yankee, former Angel, Randy Velarde. You had Long, I think it was Terrence Long, who was a serviceable leadoff guy. He got on and did some things, and you had Hernandez, and then you had the 3-headed beast of Hudson Mulder and Zito. Those guys were a pain in the Angels' ass all year, and everyone else's too. I mean, they had a fairly decent rotation that year.
I'm trying to look through their winning streak here. So they have a winning streak of what?
I think it was 23, wasn't it?
No, the Angels.
Oh, the Angels.
I think they had like a 10-game winning streak here in September
Yeah.
from the 29th of August to the 8th of September. They scored 70 runs
Oh
in
man.
that stretch of games. So
Yeah.
let's look at some of these scores. So, like I said, I have to split a little bit into August. So 6-1, 6-2, 9-0, 9-3, 10-2, 4-2, 10-1, 6-3, 4-2, and 6-2. 70 runs
Wow.
during that stretch of games.
That's
That
impressive.
is bonkers. It's not even the fact that it's like a lot of runs. Like their pitching was pretty decent during that stretch too.
Well, look at after September 9th, they lost to Oakland 2-1. They went back on a 6-game winning streak where they were pummeling people. They were scoring. They went 5-2, 6-5, 7-6, 3-2, 8-6, 13-4. You know, they were scoring runs, dude.
Yeah, the only little snag there they hit was against the Mariners and the Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What, 4 straight losses? Yeah.
Yeah, that was towards the end. I think they were just like at that time. I think they already had clinched a wild card, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I mean this is
Got people off their feet or whatever, but
yeah. I mean, it was a wonderful season. You know that I remember. It was just that was the first time me as a fan watching the Angels actually celebrating anything. Because, you know, again, I started watching in 86. I thought I would see that in 95. It should have happened in 95. The collapse happened, so I didn't get to see them celebrate a wild card berth or nothing. So for them to celebrate, yes, it was in Texas, I think, when they clinched. It was just beautiful. You know, I'm for the first time in my life at that time, I was like, we're going to the playoffs. We're going to the playoffs, you know?
and I mean, the 2002 season is kind of what started the glory days for the Angels fans, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you had that year where obviously you won the World Series. And then shortly after, I know 03 was a bad season, but I mean, shortly after that, and then coincidentally, right around when Artie first kind of took over, and he really started to take control. I mean, they started to make those big signings in the form of Colon and Guerrero. The Angels were very relevant for the next, half decade.
Yeah. Well, I think it was almost a decade. They were winning consistently, 80 to 90 games and sometimes more. So that was a definite time, a great time to be an Angel fan. You know, but you just look back and you're like, damn, if they could have just rattled off at least one more World Series, it would have made like everything more legitimatized, because I think whenever you have a team that only wins one World Series or one title, they're always looked at as a one-hit wonder. So you like to get that second one under your belt so that you're like, okay, we did more than one. And that was the perfect stretch for them to get that second one, but unfortunately it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think they had some chances there. I mean, 2009 was probably the biggest one, right? I mean, everyone talks about like the Angels were, picked by some people to make the World Series. And obviously once you make the dance, you never know what happens. 2005, they had a decent chance. So
I still think they beat Chicago. They're going to sweep Houston. They were much anyone in the AL was going to kill Houston. Houston was old. I just felt if they could have just got past the White Sox, there was their second title right there. Right there.
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, they had two legitimate chances there in 2005 and 2009. Like I said, 2009, I know a lot of people picked them to win the World Series.
Yep.
They were good. They were very good that year. Mm-hmm. So, we could have happened, should have happened, but we know what happened with woulda, coulda, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's bittersweet to look back, but when you do look back at these rosters, you're like, oh, I remember that guy, and I remember how fun it was to watch him at that year. And then you kind of backtrack and you're like, all right, man, I'm really hoping that there's that optimism for this year to be like, okay, we've seen what they've done in the offseason through trades or through drafting, and you want to see that team return to glory again. And I think those are the glory years that maybe now we appreciate that back in the day we kind of got a little too confident, overly confident. I think the last 7 years have slapped us around a little bit to realize what we had at one point. So,
yeah, I mean, we didn't appreciate it back then, but we should have.
Yes, exactly. Should have been a lot more happier instead of, because I know I was critical. Once we got that first title, I'm like, hey, we got to do this again. Let's get this team together. Oh, we only won 95 games. Shame on you. You know what I mean? you forgot. Yeah, you forgot where we came from. I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of Angel fans did.
Turned into like a Philadelphia sports fan.
Yeah.
Man, like you always hear about Philly sports fans being like harsh, and then like I went to a 76ers game and like they were legitimately booing the players off the court because they lost by like 20 points. It was pretty funny.
Well, it's the same fan base that boos Santa, so I wouldn't expect any less.
Yeah, well, they didn't get anything for Christmas. That's why.
That's true.
All they got was Bryce Harper and overpriced jerseys.
And those pinstripes that Randy loves so much.
Yeah.
Don't get him started on pinstripes.
Do not. Randy triggered.
Exactly.
Do we have anything to add about this season? Not about the playoffs. That's a whole other episode.
Yeah. I'll just say that there was a couple standouts I think I talked about on the roster that was kind of weird that they did not make the playoff roster, but I know Aaron Seeley had a little bit of an injury problem, but they never gave him a shot. He was always on the bench being the rah-rah guy. Guys like Pote and Lucas Shavitz didn't really get their shot, or Al Levine, who pitched through the seasons with the Angels, but just did not get those postseason shots. So I'll say that. And then also the addition, I think late in the year in September, of getting Alex Ochoa. I thought he was awesome for relieving a guy like Salmon, who he already had a lot of miles on his career in right field. So they would plug Ochoa in late in games in right field or in left field for Anderson. And he always seemed to make really good plays. He was a good pinch runner. Not too much with a bat, but I like the dude as he was Figgins before Figgins. And I thought he did a real good job in the outfield. I thought he was a key addition. So that's one of the things I remember about late in the year. Alex Ochoa.
So that Figgins could run, huh?
Yeah. I mean, Figgins was he was brought in September 2, and I think he was added late to the playoff roster, and he did some things. But Alex Ochoa actually played more than Figgins that year. People forget about that.
Yeah, no, I did.
Okay, you proved my point. But yeah, that's my final thoughts.
Obviously, the 2002 season was a magical one for the Angels, and the roller coaster that led to the first and only championship in our history, proves to be timeless, right? I mean, that's why we can sit around and have these conversations where people sit back and remember where they were, or, stories they've heard from others. And, that's why it sucks for me. Like I said, I was 7. So a lot of these things I've lived through videos and DVDs and YouTube specials and things like that. I don't remember much. So it's cool to always hear these experiences from fans that do remember because they were older.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we can get the newer memories here coming up.
Yeah, right. God, just make a playoff game. Just make a playoff game. That's all I ask.
Exactly.
All right. Well, anything before we wrap up this one?
I'm looking forward to our postseason coverage. Talking about the Yankees series and what transpired in that first round for maybe both leagues, and then we'll maybe talk about the clinching series against the Twins. And then the World Series is what I think everyone's waiting for. And what do we got in store for that? If you want to let them know and remind the fans again about the World Series stuff.
Yeah, so we're hoping to do a live stream on YouTube, all of our social media networks, but so we can rewatch Game 6 or Game 7. Mm-hmm. And we can just kind of come on. We kind of want to treat it like it's happening. So, we'll try our very best to color commentate like if this is new stuff. Like we don't know that Spezio's going to hit a home run or anything like that. I just feel like it'd be really, really cool to just kind of relive that. Hopefully you guys are going to enjoy everything that comes with this week. Mm-hmm. I know we were talking about, obviously during every single one of these days, it's going to be a different episode, 7 straight days of episodes. You guys know that. But if the morning of every single day, we were talking about how cool it would be to come on every morning and treat it like a morning news report, like of one of the days of the World Series. Like Game 6, we'll pretend like it just happened. Like, oh, Scott Spezio, Troy Glass, blah, 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 blah. Percival came in and shut the door. We want to treat it like it's really happening. So I think all of that stuff combined is going to make this a really memorable week for all of us, so we can truly celebrate the season that was 2002. We're so excited to have you guys along for the journey. Go ahead and tell your friends that this is happening. Tell them to look up Halos of the Infield. You guys know where to find us, our podcast. You guys know where to find us on our social media. If you guys want to participate in those morning exercises and morning excitement of covering the World Series. And yeah, we're just happy to have you guys here. And make sure to check out halosoftheinfield.com for everything from merchandise to Chinook Seedery, who is also sponsoring this episode. Make sure to check them out. And yeah, make sure to check out the merchandise. Fast Times Under the Halo, aka Randy Oz, does a great job on our merchandise. We absolutely love him for that. Absolute best in the game. I
agree. Well said. And yeah, catch that new website. It's going to be excellent as we get into the season here. So again, for Toddfox and Halos in the Infield and the celebration of the 2002 World Series champion Anaheim Angels, this is Toddfox along with
Fernando Mendez.
And give them your outro, which is
Los Angelitos.
There you go.